Hey, Auburn's got a future star in the making in freshman linebacker Joseph Phillips. We're going to discuss some single season records that we'd love to see broken. And then we're going to wrap it up with some basketball talk basketball lineups, a little bit of Jaylin Williams update, and have some fun. This is episode 21 of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Five, and we're ready to rock and roll. But before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to our boy Ford Stokes at Active Wealth Management. Reach out to him on activewealth.com. Have a conversation with him. You're going to learn a ton. You're going to learn a ton. You're going to make a friend. You're going to bug out, talk some Auburn sports, and you're gonna learn a lot. Like, for example, learn how, hey, you got all your money tied up in that CD, how you can possibly earn double the interest and still have a lot of the same security that you have with through a CD. So give Ford a shout, activewealth.com. He's got another investing book that you can get at annuity360.net for free, possibly get it autographed. Check out both places, show him some love, and tell him War Eagle. All right. I love to do, signee profiles, things like that. And one of my favorite players of this past class, this 2024 class, is Joseph Phillips from not very far away from Auburn, Tuskegee at Booker T. Washington High School. Look, in a recruiting class, the typical goal is if you can get 6 to 8 difference makers. And by difference makers, I mean guys that can possibly compete to be all conference, whether it be first team, second team, whatever. If you can get 6 to 8 of those in a class and those stack up, you're going to be in really good shape. And I really, truly believe Joseph Phillips is going to be one of those guys that can be a difference maker. The recruitment was interesting. He was big time in love with Auburn early, came on a lot of visits. And then all of a sudden, Georgia kind of came out of nowhere. And he announced, I believe that, a week prior that he was going to commit on the following Thursday, and crystal balls and predictions started going in for Georgia like a couple of days before the commitment announcement. And we were like, man, how in the world did this happen? How did Georgia end up swooping in and taking this guy that's literally 30, 40 miles down the road? Like, been here a ton. Heard so much buzz about him. And then all of a sudden Thursday rolls around, and like the morning of the commitment, you're starting to hear, I think Auburn, I don't think Auburn's out of it. I think Auburn may have gotten back into this. And then sure enough, he commits to Auburn, and it was a huge win. This was one of those guys that I would label as a can't miss. And there's a few for this next class, but there's certain guys you just can't not get, whether it be from a relationship standpoint, whether it be from a perception standpoint, whether it be from a location standpoint, somebody in your backyard, whatever it may be. There's tons of different, there's tons of different criteria that could fall into a can't miss. Joseph Phillips was one of those. Position of need, location, proximity, highly ranked, and somebody that you just really had to have, and you lost some momentum, and then you got it back really fast. You got him committed, and then it never really wavered from there. He is going to be, I think he's going to probably start out as an outside linebacker. He reported, y'all know how I love a height and weight chart. He reported in December, so he enrolled early, working out with the team. They weigh him and everything right when they get there, measure him, weigh him, everything. 6'2", 240 as a freshman. In comparison, that's essentially what Jalen McLeod, our starting outside linebacker, that's essentially his size right now, and he's been in college for 3 or 4 years. So you got a guy that's going to be physically, from a frame standpoint, pretty much ready to go. He's obviously going to have to learn the scheme, the system, technique. Got to refine that. I mean, he did play in a pretty solid classification, and they went pretty deep in the playoffs, and they knocked off in the playoffs this year probably one of the more talented teams in Alabama, in Jackson, I believe, in the playoffs. And he had a big game in that game. He played both ways at 5A or 4A. Sorry, both ways in 4A, which is not completely unheard of, but once you start getting above like 4A, 5A, a lot of those guys that it's specialized and they play one side of the ball. He played a little bit of tight end, a little bit of wide receiver. He was their jump ball guy, and then he was a 2-point stance outside linebacker, pass rusher, and he had a really big year this past year. I have some stats. I had some stats on him from his past year. So his 2023 year receiving was interesting. So he had 400. This is rushing yards. He had 450 rushing yards. He had 246 receiving yards, which I can imagine a 6'2", 240-pound guy in that classification is going to be a monster. And then on defense, he had, give me a second, pull it up. On defense, he had, come on now, I had it pulled up right here. Defense from a defensive end, outside linebacker position, he had 140 total tackles, 35 tackles for loss. And then here's something that's going to make you excited: 10 sacks. Auburn has sort of struggled in the getting to the quarterback category for seemingly quite some time, especially from a just a regular four-man front rushing the passer. Auburn seems to have struggled the last couple of years. We got to bring pressure, bring more than four guys, and especially last year. And this is a guy that can get after the quarterback. When you're at that level, all you want to see is domination. You want to see you want to see a player be dominant if they come from, not the top classification of their state. If they're going to be in a 4A, you want to see them absolutely dominate. And that's what he did. That's what he did. You put him part-time running back and he just trucks people and scores touchdowns. You put him part-time wide receiver, he can go up and catch fades. He can do whatever he wants to do. And then you put him at his natural position and he wreaks havoc. 140 tackles, and you got to think he's from one side of the field. So he rushes from one side of the field, but he's all over the field. And I think he's versatile enough that he could probably even play possibly middle linebacker. Like, I think he could play a little bit. He could play a little bit of everywhere, but I think they're probably going to start him off at outside linebacker. Just a big addition. Big addition. And again, when you're trying to rebuild, when you're trying to get this thing going back in the direction that you needed to go, Joseph Phillips is a key component of how you get that done. Like I said earlier, if you want to get to that 6 to 8 factors of every single class, 6 to 8 impact players of every single class, Joseph Phillips definitely checks the box as one of those. And obviously we'll have to see how it progresses. I cannot wait to see him go through spring. Didn't hear a ton from him from any of the winter workouts and practices and things like that he may have gone through. But spring is going to be a time to shine, because really, if you really think about it, you got Jalen McLeod, and then you got just nothing established after that from a pass rushing perspective. So between him, Jamonta Waller, and then I believe his name's Brenton from Opelika. Gosh, I'm losing his name. But he was a late addition to that 2023 class. So he's going to be only one more year into the system. Essentially a wide open job. It's simply essentially a wide open job. So adding Joseph Phillips to this class, and sort of that big win over Georgia that you needed to have from a perception standpoint, confidence standpoint. And then the kid is just a really good kid too. Like, there were some stories that came out. I think Jeffrey Lee from On3 reported that he would go to practice and then he couldn't come on visits because he had to work. He would have to work because he was helping take care of his family. Like, that's just the kind. If that doesn't, that's when you're there, when you're looking at a player and all of the different characteristics, character in general still matters. And for a guy to be able to be a football star and then go to work after practice and then make it happen to help with the family, you love to see it for guys like that. Hopefully, he's here. He's got a good, package through On to Victory, and he's able to use who sort of he's built as his brand to be able to make some more money to help, whatever, help himself, help his family, whatever. But those type of guys, it's just huge, man. Just huge to have character guys that you can add on top of talent in all of the other aspects that he has. So I'm pumped for Joseph Phillips. I think you guys should too. He seems to be, I think he was one of those guys that was real quiet, came in early, and then sort of we kind of forgot about him. The fanfare shifted to, let's go get the Cam Colemans. Let's go try to get the Ryan Williams. Let's go try to get the other 5-star guys. And this was a borderline, 5-star guy that we got in early, that we were just sort of, I feel like sometimes maybe gets taken for granted. So I'm pumped about Joseph Phillips, and I think you should too. All right, I put out a fun tweet yesterday and got some fun responses, and I want to kind of break those down. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to plainscoffee.com. Use coupon code BUTTON to take 10% off. I don't know why you would buy coffee anymore from a big box store. I don't understand why you would do it anymore when you can have it shipped to your door and it's fresh, like literally can smell it from outside type fresh, like grind before a couple of days before it ships fresh. Use coupon code BUTTON, save 10%. They got roasts for everyone. They got the darkest roast you can imagine. They got the lightest roast you can imagine. And if you don't like coffee, they got tea as well. So again, do everything you can not to have to go into a grocery store. I feel like that's what everything's moving towards. Stay out of the grocery store. You don't have to do it anymore. Plainscoffee.com. Everybody drinks coffee in the morning. Why not have it shipped straight to your door and fresh? So check them out, plainscoffee.com. And you can also help out an Auburn bro by doing so. So plainscoffee.com. All right, I put out a fun tweet yesterday, and I looked at some of the single season records at Auburn. And I'll admit some of them are a little bit meager. Okay. Some of them are not just mega impressive outside of possibly maybe some rushing stats. So I said, hey, if you could pick one single season record to be broken in 2024, what would it be? And the options were having a 3,300 yard passer, which the record was somewhere around like 3277, something like that. So a 3,300 yard passer, an 1,100 yard receiver. We haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since like 1990 something. Like Ronnie Daniels, I believe, was the last 1,000-yard receiver. And then a 1,950 yard rusher, or 15 sacks, which that was a little bit higher than the record. The record for sacks was like 11 and a half, I believe, with Nick Fairley. But so 3,300 yard passer, 1,100 yard receiver, essentially a 2,000 yard rusher, or 15 sacks. And it got a ton of activity, a ton of comments. And the vast majority, which is understandable, the vast majority of you picked the 3,300 yard passer, which I totally get. I would love to see, the last several years, the passing attack has just not been there. You have to go back to possibly, the Jarrett Stidham, 2 years of Jarrett Stidham, where he threw for over 3,000 and then threw for, close to 3,000 again. the following year to really see Auburn air it out, and especially with the way offenses are going these days. You just see a lot of high flying, you know, passing touchdowns galore. You know, big time receivers in Auburn, for whatever reason, is always more. We always lean towards the rushing, or we always are just somewhat inept, so to speak, in the passing game. So I totally get the 3,300-yard passing. I didn't choose that, but and the reason is because even at 3,300 yards, I didn't say over that. I was like, you have to end on that, basically. So that's still only. What's crazy is that's only 250 yards a game. Like that's not even averaging 300 yards a game. So it's while 250 yards a game will be fantastic. It's just not what you typically. It's not what you're seeing out of these big time passing offenses. It's not really what you see out of some of the more elite passing offenses that Hugh Freeze has had. So um, I get it. And I think that was by far the number one answer was passing. And I would take it. Hey, I would love to see, Peyton Thorne, um, whoever, Hank Brown, Walker White. I'd love to see any of them next year throw for 3,300 yards, because if that happens, I do think a lot of the other stuff sort of falls into place. But again, 3,300 yards is fantastic, and I would take it because we've only had a handful, not even a handful, just a couple of 3,000-yard passing seasons. But some of the other one, there was one other one in particular that we'll get to that I picked to be my favorite. So number 2, 1,100-yard receiver. I got to be honest, it's kind of embarrassing that Auburn has not had an 1,000-yard receiver in seemingly 20 years. It's almost hard to imagine that that's even possible, because I mean, you have 35 to 40 uh, college wide receivers every year that go over 1,000 yards. Like that's just the way of college football now. I mean, it's almost that many players every single year, and Auburn just never has one. We haven't really had a go-to guy in quite a while. Hopefully that changes this year. Hopefully, you got a Cam Coleman, or one of the older guys steps up, whatever. But I think that's got to change. One of the things, if you look at Hugh Freeze's offenses, he's had several 1,000-yard receivers. He had a receiver his first year at Liberty that was like 1,300 yards receiving. So I wouldn't get mega discouraged about this past year, because that's not the type of ball that Hugh Freeze wants to play. That's not the type of offensive ball that Hugh Freeze wants to play. He wants to be able to get it in the hands of playmakers. He wants to be able to let his wide receivers make plays and get downfield, and have big gains and catch passing touchdowns and things like that. So this was almost my number one, because I feel like if you can have, I want Auburn to have a go-to guy. I want Auburn to have a go-to receiver, man. I want Auburn to have a dog. I want Auburn to have, some dude that can just go up there. Uh, no matter what, you put a guy on him, it doesn't matter. He's getting the ball. The ball's coming his way, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what I want, and I'm hoping that one of these big time freshman guys that becomes they become who that is. Maybe multiple. Love to have multiple. That's why I liked Rivaldo, because I felt like at times Rivaldo, you could put anybody on him, and he could go up and catch it last year. But I'm hoping we get that from a actual wide receiver, and we can put up some big numbers. So that was number 2. Number 3 was 1,950 yards from a running back. That's that. I would like to see that, but that's just not college football anymore. There hasn't been a 2,000-yard rusher since, I believe, 2019. As a matter of fact, I think the leading rusher this past season was somewhere around like 1,700 yards. So it's great, but it's just not. It's not college football anymore. It's not really, one guy that's going to pound the rock. And another thing is, if Auburn has a 1,950-yard rusher next year, that means somebody's not happy. One of these incredibly talented guys that we have on the roster is not happy. And I think I think it also takes away from a lot of the skills. It would take away a lot of the skill set that several of the other guys have, whether it be Jeremiah Cobb in the passing game, or you know Brian Battie in the screen game, or Damari Alston just kind of being an all around guy, just like Jarquez. I would say Damari is a little bit more of an all around guy. Jarquez is just the pure runner. He's not really a threat in the passing game. And honestly, I kind of hope we don't throw him the ball that much, because we struggled at times trying to get him the ball. But still, 1,950 yards from a running back would be awesome. It would be awesome, but I would be concerned about, we'd probably control the clock a lot, but I'll be concerned about keeping everybody else happy, because that's going to take a lot. I mean, if you can average 5 yards a carry, like, just do the math on how many 5 yards it takes to get to, how many carries it's going to take to get to 1,950 yards. So it's quite a bit. So I get it. Especially old school guys love to just see, hey, I'm going to go run through somebody. I love to see people run through somebody's face. Linebacker, meet me in the hole. I'm going to put you on your back. I get it. I love the toss sweep. I love all that old school stuff. I formation. That's just not college football anymore. And I don't know. We may have some 1,000-yard rushers. I think we could easily have some 1,000-yard rushers in this offense, but I just don't know how efficient, how effective you're going to be in this Hugh Freeze offense if you have a 2,000-yard rusher next year. I'd be sort of concerned about everything around it. So, but I get it. The last one, this is what I picked. Okay, this is what I picked. I want to set the stage for you. Okay, how many of you remember the electricity that we would get in 2017 when Jeff Holland would come around the edge and you could feel it coming? You knew that Georgia game, there was nothing they could do to stop him, and he was just teeing off on Jake Fromm. D Ford, when he would come around the edge, and there was nothing you could do. Nick Fairley in 2010, I feel like the biggest eruptions, the most electricity that you get, the most momentum swings you can get is when you sack the quarterback. That's one of my favorite plays. That's one of my favorite plays in football. You got the fade, or not. I guess that's not necessarily a play. That's sort of like an outcome, I guess. So I love a touchdown on a fade. That's my number one. And then I love a sack. I love sack lunches. There's nothing that gets me more jacked during a football game, especially when you're in the crowd, and then on top of that, when you can see it coming. Auburn's leading sack leading sacker, I think, is a tie. Nick Fairley, believe it or not, from the defensive tackle position, was like 11 and a half. 15 sacks. That's an incredible season, and I don't think it's entirely unattainable, especially with some of the more talented guys that you're bringing in. I just feel like sacks can completely change games. Sacks can flip field position. Sacks can create turnovers, and then just the fear of a sack, just the fear of that pressure changes everything. Because if you got 15 sacks, you probably got like 30 or 40 pressures where you're rushing that quarter. You're speeding up that quarterback's clock to make decisions that could end up in an interception, a fumble, a throwaway, whatever. I want a dog pass rusher. I want a guy that when he lines up over there, you already see that tackle. He's trying to line up a little bit off the line, trying to get as much width, trying to get as much, advantage as he possibly can. You got the pointing, you got the, hey, I need help, all that kind of stuff. I love seeing that. And we haven't had that for a while. And I think Jalen McLeod showed flashes of it last year. and then you got bring in two really, really talented freshmen, and then you got another guy that's pretty solid right behind Jalen McLeod that developed all last year. So I picked sacks. I want to see sacks. I want to see strip sacks. I want to see fumbles. I want to see some blindside face mask right between the shoulder blades. As long as it's not targeting, I want to see some sacks, man. So that's the one I picked. There were several people that picked it as well. So it wasn't like I was the only one. So it was really fun to see all the interaction. So a ton of people wanted rushers, and I get it. I will say there was not as much on the wide receiver as I thought there would be. I figured that would be a bigger one, but it seemed like people gravitated towards the quarterback. Totally understandable, because if the quarterback throws for 3,300 yards, more than likely there could be somebody really close to going for 1,000 yards receiving. So I get that too, and especially after the offenses you've watched over the last, gosh, since maybe 2019, from a passing perspective, I get it. I get it. You want to see us air the ball out. You want to see us move the ball down the field, be explosive, and hopefully with some of the young guys, you'll be able to do that. And with Hugh calling all the plays and offense being 100%, there's no division on you got this, I got that. It's boom. It's one guy, one vision, one offense, and I look forward to seeing hopefully a little bit more explosion. A-Day, I don't think we'll see a lot, but we may get a pretty good idea of the direction, I guess, that we want to go, the direction that we'll see on this offense. So fun tweet, fun conversation. I appreciate all the participation in it. That was that was a discussion that I was having that morning with some friends, and I just threw it out there, and then all my Twitter friends, all my other friends, jumped in on the conversation too. So good job on that. Last thing, let's wrap up. Let's talk a little bit of basketball. So a Jaylin update. Now, this I don't think is official, but I would expect him to miss at least 4 games. Senior night is kind of what I'm hearing that maybe he gets to come back, and I would hope he would get to come back and participate. He's going to participate in senior night, but I think he'd love to be. It's his last home game at Auburn, and over this incredible career that'll never be topped at Auburn. I assume, especially from a winning standpoint. Love to have him back by then, but I think you're going to miss at least 4 games. So you got Georgia coming up this weekend. You got Tennessee. You got Mississippi State, and then you got Missouri. So those 4 games, Auburn can easily go 3-1 over that stretch. Georgia is very, very beatable. You had a week to prepare. Tennessee's going to be tough. Just face it. They're really, really good. They're probably the best team in the SEC, top 2 for sure. And you got to play them on the road. They have been vulnerable at home. South Carolina knocked them off. So maybe, who knows? If you get hot shooting, and especially with some of the possible lineups that we could see, maybe it could create some mismatches. It could be fun to see. But and then you got Mississippi State at home. Again, it's a home game. Everybody's going to be, rowdy. Auburn just plays better at home, minus Kentucky. And then you got to go on the road against Missouri, who actually played Tennessee pretty tough this past Saturday. I'm sorry, not this past Saturday. I believe it was yesterday. And you got to go there. So you feel like you should be able to handle it. It's a road game, but they haven't won a game yet. So you kind of feel like you should handle that. So that little stretch without Jaylin could easily go 3-1. Could also go 2-2. You got to figure out ways to got to figure out different ways to score without running it through Jaylin. It seems like when Jaylin plays well, we blow people out, and when Jaylin struggled, we struggled. Period. So now you have no Jaylin. So you got to figure something out. The good thing, I guess, if you had to find a silver lining for his injury, if he had to get injured, it got injured on the Saturday before the bye week. So you have had essentially 7 days to figure out lineups to make it work going on the road against Georgia. So what will those lineups look like? There's been all kinds of speculation. You got small ball, you got small lineup options. You got some really big lineup options. There's been talk of possibly having, and this could be maybe for Tennessee, don't know, but definitely something that's been rumored, or talked about that has been rotated is having Dylan and Janai on the court at the same time and having Janai play a little bit more of that power forward position where he's spread out and gets a little bit more looks from three. He's shooting close to 50% from deep in conference anyway. So maybe give him a little bit more looks that Jaylin had. And then you can rotate him obviously from, it doesn't mean he has to play there the whole game, but maybe start off there, rotate over to rotate it over to the 5 around the first time of the substitutions, all that. There's all kind of rotational things, but that is a lineup that's been talked about is, what does it look like when you got Janai getting Jaylin looks? Janai's not really the ball. I don't feel like he handles the ball quite as well as Jaylin, but he gets looks from outside, and Jaylin got a lot of looks from inside. He got a lot of looks. Sometimes I feel like he got a lot more favorable looks inside than Janai did. Janai gets a lot of looks where it's like, okay, everything's kind of exhausted. We've kind of exhausted the options. Just get it into him, and he's got 2 or 3 guys on him, and he's got to go up. He's got to go up and make a play. Versus Jaylin, we're switching and we're moving and we're getting matchups, and he can get a little 5 or 6 foot little left hand hook that he's really good at, and maybe you can get Janai a little bit more of those. So that would be an interesting lineup, and then you can go real small. There's talk of going mega small where you have your point guard, which could be Aiden or Trey. You got KD, Denver at 3, and then possibly Chad Baker-Mazara at 4. Now, I've been screaming to give him more looks from 3. I want Chad shooting, 4 or 5 a game because he's shooting like 45% from 3 in conference. So could that be a way that you could use speed and athleticism to attack, to get spacing, and then obviously that all the spacing and whatnot, the pressure that you could put on the defense would help Janai get some better looks. So Georgia's not very big. Could you see a lot of smaller run and gun and chuck it type lineups? You can that could be a fun thing to watch. I personally would love that lineup. Intrigues me more than maybe any of them. Having Chad and Denver on the court at the same time to be able to run and gun and chuck and get good looks at 3. I've been I want Denver and I want Chad to be able to shoot somewhere around 12 threes a game combined. I think if that happens, you're going to hit half of them. You're going to hit at least half of them, and that's big. That's big. Half or maybe just a little bit under. You're going to hit, if you shoot 12, you're going to hit somewhere between, somewhere around 5 or 6 of those between those guys, just based off their numbers. So the lineups could be fun to watch. Got to get a little bit more, this injury sort of, because we're going to have to experiment with extra lineups, you're probably going to have to see Aiden play a little bit more. The last 2 games, his minutes had come down because you sort of gave Denver a chance to play point guard. And I guess he still could, but you're probably going to need him elsewhere now. So Aiden, I love Aiden Holloway. I love his game. He's young. He's not physically there yet, but he shows flashes. I mean, even if you look at the last game, he can every now and then when he wants to, he can get to the basket and get fouled. And that's what I feel like this offense from the point guard position is missed, is when things sort of break down and there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of open shots. There's not a lot of things going. You got to be able to just get to the basket and get up, get a shot off, get fouled, get to the line, or drive in and be able to dish it. And he's been able to do that at times. So maybe he can get over sort of the shooting yips that he has. He's a really good shooter. You can tell by his stroke it's a good stroke, but for whatever reason they're just not going in. And I think you don't want to just park a guy. When he's going through something, you don't want to just 100% park a guy and say, okay, you're done for the year. Sometimes those dudes can shoot their way out of it. And boy, do we need it now more than ever. So with these experimental lineup, not these experimental lineup, but these lineups that you're having in lieu of Jaylin being out over the next 4 games, let's see what happens. It could be fun. It could be fun. You could have a more running gun type offense that we love to see, especially if they go small. So it'll be fun to watch. In talks about Jaylin in general, I would be okay if he just sat out the whole rest of the season. I'd be fine. Like, in reality, you can go 4-1 or 3-2 over the next 5 games. It's going to put you at 13-5 or 12-6 at worst. You just had Florida and Kentucky lose again yesterday, which helps you in the SEC standings to get to that 4th number 1 seed for the tournament. Win a couple of games in the tournament, maybe make a run with a healthy Jaylin back. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. I don't want to say that running the table is not completely out of the option either. It's not like it's just completely impossible. So, but you got teams that you got to have lose multiple games to get a share of the title. So, with that being said, I'm looking at March. I'm looking at tournaments. Keep Jaylin healthy. Don't push it. Don't get him out there before he's ready to go. And let's make a run in some tournaments. We still have, again, when he's healthy, we have one of the most efficient offenses and most efficient defenses in the country at the same time. Okay, so you're up until that Kentucky game, you're top 10 in net rankings on like Ken Palm and all the higher analytical sites. You're a top offense and you're a top 10 defense, top 10 offense and a top 10 defense all at once. And those teams are built to make runs in the tournament. Your best shooting games, 3 of your best 4 shooting games from 3 were on neutral sites. Your highest percentages of hitting threes, 3 out of the 4 games were on neutral sites. So we're not necessarily the narrative that Auburn can't play away from Neville is just not really true. Not really true. Because you're getting confused. You're confusing road games with neutral site games. And all the tournament games are neutral site games. And some of Auburn's best offensive performances this year have been neutral site games. So if you get Jaylin back, we're built to make a run. We're built to make a run in both tournaments. Both tournaments. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen, but we're built for it. So let's see what happens. Let's see what the lineups are this weekend. I'll be talking about it on Wings 94.3 after the game. Our call-in show, if you're listening, want to find us on like TuneIn or something like that, or you can go to the Auburn Network website, I'm sure, and log in and listen after the game. We'll be on 30 minutes after the game. Listen, we'll break it down, call in, let's chat, let's boog. I can't wait to kind of see how that game plays out. So we still got a couple of days. Boy, it's brutal having an off week. Basketball, there's just always something during basketball season, man, there's just always a game right around the corner. It seems like waiting a week, it just takes forever. So fired up for the game, fired up to talk about Auburn again. And then, we'll be back Tuesday to break it all back down and spring practice kicks off. We may have a little bit of depth chart predictions and things like that. So looking forward to it. A lot of stuff right around the bend. Dead period's about to be up. Recruiting is going to be on fire. Tons of visits already scheduled. So hang in there. The news is about to get hot, and I'm going to be here to help fill you in. So follow me on Twitter, _Charlie_5. Like and subscribe this video. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel. Tell a friend about it. And then I'll be on Locked on Auburn every Tuesday, and I'm in the Locked on Auburn Discord every single day, which is linked down below, mixing it up. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, War Eagle, and stay buttoned.